Normally, my videos are the result of extensive research and careful planning. Most times I prefer to talk about general aspects of psychology that affect all of us on a daily basis. This is not one of those videos. On May 6, 2021, Kentaro Miura, the author and artist of Berserk, passed away due to a heart condition. He was only 54 years old. Miura's creativity, dedication, and mastery of the craft cannot be overstated. I wrote this script about a month before he passed, and I considered shelving it. Talking about a story which I adore, but which may never be finished, seemed unbearable. But Berserk is a story that impacted me on a deep, personal, and philosophical level, and I'm not the only one who's going to miss it. So instead, I decided to show my love and appreciation for Miura's masterpiece the only way I can, by appreciating its hidden psychological depths and examining what we can learn from it. To do this, I'm unfortunately going to have to spoil a lot of it. Sadly, there is no other way. So if you haven't seen or read Berserk, go do that now. This isn't a self-help channel, but if I have any life advice for anyone, it's this. Read Berserk. That is all. From here on, there'll be spoilers and content warnings. Hello, and welcome to PsychoSocialism, where today we're looking at a story and using it to explore the darkest corners of the human mind. Berserk is one of my favourite stories in the history of stories. I love the 97 anime, I adore the manga, and the newer series I refuse to watch because it is to Berserk what Thatcher was to the Coal Miners' Union, a disgusting, destructive roadblock to human happiness and prosperity.
Children who need to be taught to respect traditional moral values are being taught that they have an inalienable right to be gay.
Berserk has rightly been given many accolades for its character development, story, and grand humanity-sweeping themes, but today we're going to analyse the story of one man within it, the greatest villain of all time.
Griffith!
Griffith. A lot has been said about Griffith in the past as a heinous betrayer, a great example of an understandable antagonist with relatable goals, and as an icon of femboys everywhere. Seriously, tell me he is not femboy goals. Griffith was a femboy king long before the concept of a Hooters was even dreamed of. In Berserk, we are introduced to Griffith as a shining warrior, a beacon of heroism and hope in a rough, unfair world. He is a man of drive, focused on his goal of having his own kingdom, despite his common birth, and drags his supporters, the mercenary band of the Hawk, from the gutters of society to the halls of legend. He cares not for class, birthright, or the status quo. He only cares for the merit of the individual. He is also the most evil being in the entire universe. Much has been made of his beauty and how it hides and contrasts his true nature in the dark world of Berserk. Much has also been made of his motivations, his goals, and his relationship with the protagonists, Guts and Casca. But what I want to talk about today is Griffith by himself, his personality, and how it paints a portrait of the darkest side of humanity, the Dark Triad traits. The Dark Triad is a framework of three, naturally, traits that were conceptualized by Paulus and Williams in 2002. The model was intended as a sort of red flag early warning system for personality psychologists specifically. Basically, the higher you score on these three personality measures, the more prone to amoral or antisocial behaviour you are. The Dark Triad traits are narcissism, a pervasive feeling of entitlement and self-importance, Machiavellianism, a willingness to lie, cheat, and manipulate and harm others around you in order to achieve your goal, and psychopathy, a lack of care about other people's feelings or values. As is to be expected, the validity of these traits and how much they matter to clinical practice is disputed, but luckily we're not going to talk about that because it's boring.
Well, I really just read them out of mere curiosity.
We aren't going to go deep diving into research and explore how these traits affect a person's behaviour. We don't really need to. We have a single character, who over the course of his arc, not only demonstrates what the Dark Triad is, but how it would reveal itself within a person over the course of time, and in what situations. So, let's talk about Griffith.
And so, now you belong to me, Guts.
At that time, he shone before me as something beautiful, noble, and larger than life.
This is the first introduction we get to Griffith. At the end of the Black Swordsman arc, we see our edgelord anti-hero Guts lose himself to blind rage at the mere sight of the being he calls Griffith. All we know about him at first is that Guts wants him dead, to the point where he's willing to fight godlike beings with power far surpassing his own, despite having a broken arm and being unable to even approach them without suffering severe pain. We really have no idea who or what Griffith is at the beginning. What we do know, from the lovely quote I read to you just now, is that Guts once idealised him and put him on a pedestal much higher than that of ordinary men.
In this world, there must be one man whose preordained course of life is the key to ruling the world. That man could be part of this world's true privileged class. That man could have the absolute power of a god. I know there's something more for me.
Throughout the golden age of Berserk, we are given context for this feeling. Griffith, Guts, and Casca fight together as mercenaries in a war that has lasted for generations. Griffith being the leader of a tight-knit group of mercenaries, proving instrumental in ending the war. For most of the story, Griffith is an enigma. He rarely discusses his life in detail with his comrades.
It's funny, I've never told this to anyone before. Just you.
What we learn about him comes from other characters' memories of events and their opinions of him. What we do know is that they all idolize him.
I think something's different here.
Huh. Do you think so? I've never thought about that. I'd have to say it's because of Griffith. Everyone really admires him.
This is the reader's first clue to what is the base of Griffith's Dark Triad, the only trait we see clearly from the beginning. Narcissism. Narcissism is defined as a delusional sense of your own importance, but from the outside, and to the other members of the Band of the Hawk, what they see is a man with a dream, a bold dream, to rule his own kingdom.
What kind of guy is Griffith, really?
Huh? I can't say.
Huh?
Now listen. I can't really describe it, but I think Griffith really believes in something beyond battle, beyond victory. Now, it's probably something he won't realize in his lifetime, but something drives him. It's something ordinary people like us can never understand.
A belief? In what?
In everything.
His confidence in his ability to achieve this dream is palpable. There are no moments when Griffith doubts his ability to succeed. Even the other members of the group note that while to most people this dream would be impossible to achieve, with Griffith they believe him, and as such they are willing to risk their lives fighting for his dream to succeed. This is a common trait among narcissists in the real world as well. While they may be fully deluded about their ability to get what they want, to outside observers they simply come across as powerfully confident, a trait one looks for in a leader. There are other clues about Griffith's narcissistic tendencies, especially early in the story. Take for example the water fight.
Would you care to join me? This is the best way to wake up.
No thanks.
Come on, join me.
Gah! Stop it! We're not kids!
Guts thinks to himself how childish Griffith is being and notes that it's completely the opposite of the cool, calm commander he has seen so far. This is another facet of narcissism, the childish behaviour married with a complete confidence that it will not disturb or upset other people. The point is hammered home by Griffith taking Guts and looking directly into his eyes and saying,
I will have my own kingdom. You must fight for me, because you belong to me. I will choose the place where you will die for me.
Narcissists in real life are described as being very striking and magnetic people, being able to draw people to them, if not keep them around for very long. Griffith is this to the nth degree. His confidence in himself and his dream is so overwhelming that it almost seems he snuck in from a different story altogether. It's like you're watching Requiem for a Dream, and suddenly the Doctor shows up, zaps everyone clean, makes a joke about the dangers of drugs, and everyone laughs as the credits roll. It seems out of place, as does Griffith. Characters within the story even hang lampshades on this, speaking of Griffith as a figure of legend in the making, perhaps even divine.
It was like a moment in a dream, unreal and divine. In his mercy, God had sent me a savior, an angel to defend me.
The contrast he strikes with the grimdark world around him is so stark that almost every action he makes seems like foolhardiness to the nobles and a trust exercise for those who follow him. The reason Griffith's confidence seems so far-fetched and irrational is because it is.
Your lordship knows nothing of the difficulties!
It appears the good luck he's had in the past has swollen his head and clouded his reason.
There is no rational reason for him to be so sure of himself. The world of Berserk certainly doesn't operate on a meritocracy. Where would the commoner get the idea that he could be king? It's impossible, right? But to a narcissist like Griffith, the idea of his dream being impossible doesn't even enter his mind. It might be impossible for everyone else, but not him, because he's
part of this world's true privileged class.
Different. According to the MPI, the main features of narcissism are authority, self-sufficiency, superiority, exploitivity, exhibitionism, vanity, and entitlement. Griffith is all of these. Throughout the story, he demonstrates all of these to one degree or another, and this is the basis for his delusional outward confidence. Self-belief alone does not normally lead to one achieving one's dreams, however, and Griffith himself begins to realise this more and more the closer he gets. While he can count on his loyal band of the Hawk, his fellow commoners, to follow him on confidence alone, when he comes across the nobility he intends to rule, however, Griffith reveals another trait.
I took advantage of an opportunity, and it just so happened it was you that was there at the time.
During the conversation between Guts and Casca in the cave, Casca reveals that Griffith sold himself to a rich noble to secure funding for his future campaigns. We are not privy to what events transpired that night, but given Griffith's effeminate beauty and the noble in question being set up as a serial abuser of young boys, we can guess. During the flashback, Casca also reveals her reasoning for why he did this. That Griffith had pangs of guilt about the death of a young aspiring knight who had followed him into battle, who died fully believing in Griffith and his dream. These events lead to what is possibly Griffith's most human and emotional moment in the entire story. When confronted about his deal with the noble, Griffith explains to Casca that he sold his body in order to prevent more unnecessary death and to keep his dream alive.
For the money. Maintaining an army is quite costly. Soldiers, horses, provisions, and equipment. None of these are free.
While usually he does not express emotions to anyone, here we see Griffith, the mighty leader of the Hawks, actively self-harming while explaining himself. Casca and a lot of the readers see this as an example of Griffith being self-sacrificing, allowing himself to be abused for the sake of others. While on the surface it certainly looks like this, I have a feeling something much deeper and more complicated is happening. Griffith, as we said before, is narcissistic and thinks very highly of himself. His decision to let a heinous pervert use him for a night is clearly soul-crushing for him. So why did he do it? This is the emergence of his second dark trait, Machiavellianism. While explaining himself, it's clear that while his mind has rationalised what has happened, his body is racked with emotion and trauma, shaking, crying, and self-harming, even while giving his bomb-proof rational reasoning to Casca.
My dream is already smeared with blood. I don't regret, I don't feel guilty, but I'd rather sacrifice myself than watch any more innocent children die in the name of my dream.
While this is a very human moment, and we never see Griffith in this state again, it doesn't stand to me as evidence of an altruistic side to his personality. To me, it shows the conflict between his narcissism and his Machiavellianism, two Dark Triad traits forced to compete with each other. While his Machiavellian thinking reminds him that this is logically the quickest and easiest way to fund his army,
we just have to keep winning!
That would take a tremendous amount of time, and the more battles we fight, the more people we lose.
His narcissism rejects the possibility of him being a victim, even by his own choice. At the end of the scene, just a few seconds after Casca sees the man she idolises on the verge of breakdown, Griffith snaps back to normal, repressing his emotions easily and quickly. The crisis between his scheming and his self-love is seemingly closed. Why? And why with Casca? Many later events and even Casca herself indicate that Griffith does not value her as a person and likely never did. She was always his soldier, and Griffith essentially treated her as nothing but that.
I want to be a sword for him.
Both his dark traits, previously working against each other, slip back into harmony when Griffith feels Casca hug him, trying to soothe his pain. Suddenly, both of them have the same goal again, to make sure that Casca does not see him as weak. His narcissism loves to be idolised, and his Machiavelli knows that it is important to keep up appearances and keep his best soldier following him to the bitter end. And it works. During the middle of the arc, Griffith is thrust into a Game of Thrones-style political intrigue, and his Machiavellian nature suddenly becomes frighteningly apparent when the nobles try to assassinate him for, well, making them all look useless, basically.
Have you heard? Sir Griffith was awarded the title of Count. Oh yes, I heard that too. He's so handsome. I'm just jealous because he is so attractive and even more graceful than any of the women at court.
Not only that, he is the greatest swordsman in the kingdom and commands the strongest army.
He has far more class than those awkward nobles, and he has so much presence and elegance. Those nobles have absolutely no idea how to treat a lady, compared to Sir Griffith.
In quite short order, Griffith woos the Princess of Midland with a piece of grass, figures out who ordered it with a single look, and has Guts murder him, killing his son as a witness in the process. When Griffith hears about this, he smiles. Then, almost all of the highest nobles in the land plot to have him poisoned. Griffith decides to fake his own death, kidnap the children of one of his enemies, use them to burn down the castle with the nobles inside it, and for good measure, kills the men he hired to do the kidnapping in the first place. And again, he smiles.
From now on, there should only be friendship and peace between us.
Just damn, dude. The trait of Machiavellianism centers around manipulation, opportunism, and indifference to moral concerns.
I would say that it could be something like a god.
More like a demon.
Who knows? Is there a difference?
Griffith has all of these, and the closer he gets to achieving his dream, the more of them we see. All this trickery and dodging of bullets leads Griffith and the Band of the Hawk to being given the title of White Phoenix Knights, a title usually held by nobility and nobility alone. However, this is not enough for a man like Griffith. He will settle for nothing less than king, after all. With his political enemies now dead, it seems like only a matter of time before he marries the hopelessly infatuated princess and achieves that goal. But there is one thing that in his narcissism he doesn't account for. Guts, who through all of this has been discovering that his best friend does not consider him in the same light.
For me to call a man my friend, he must be equal to me in all respects.
Decided to venture out and find his own dream to chase, essentially doing what Griffith would do in his place. Griffith does not take this well, insisting that Guts duel him and earn his freedom just as they had before when they first met. To Griffith, this is a no-brainer decision. He knows Guts and his fighting style so well at this point, there's no way he could...
No! I cannot allow this. If he will not be mine, his life is forfeit. Now!
Oh. This event, much like his decision to sleep with the noble, causes another crisis for Griffith's two leading personality traits. His Machiavellianism is in distress because he just lost a valuable asset, one that had been instrumental in his dirty work before, and who might have the power to spill secrets if he leaves. But more importantly, Griffith's core, his narcissistic belief in himself, has finally been disproven. To his face, in front of all the others no less. This moment, this utter shattering of his self-concept as a man destined to have everything go his way, causes such distress that it leads into the worst mistake that Griffith ever makes. Well, second worst. Instead of following his Machiavellian plan from before, he acts to try and re-establish his narcissistic confidence by taking advantage of the person who has never seen him fail, Princess Charlotte. This moment, unlike the previous big moments in his development, is the only one we get to see in real time, and it's the moment that we, through his distress, shame and arrogance, get a glimpse of the final piece of his Dark Triad. Psychopathy.
If you think this man your friend, then know this. When you regard one another as brother, and this man's ambition crumbles, it is your destiny to face your death.
The morning after he takes Charlotte's virginity, Griffith is captured, and a long year of torture and debilitation begins. In the manga, his narcissism in taunting the king only makes things worse for him, and the torturer describes knowing his flesh as well as a lover for a year. Ugh. By the end of his ordeal, he is literally a shadow of the man he was, physically damaged beyond repair, and mentally broken from an entire year of obsessing over Guts, the man who broke his world by beating him in combat and leaving him. Much has been made over the subtext between Guts and Griffith. Were they friends? Or did Griffith, the mighty leader of the Hawks, yearn for Guts in a way that he never found a way to express?
The one who cast me into this darkness. He is now my anchor. This man whose life was once in my hands. When did I fall under your control?
Griffith himself contemplates this many times in the dungeon. He struggles to understand why his interactions with Guts seemed more emotionally charged than his interactions with Casca and the others. He blames Guts for making him lose his composure, blames him for refusing to bend on command, and most of all, for leaving him. It's worth mentioning that Griffith never considered for a second that he might be at fault, or he was responsible for anything that had happened to him. These are the thoughts of a psychopath, a person who has no regard for the feelings of others, or may not even consider them to have feelings at all. While his night with the noble pushed Griffith to become more deceptive, the loss to Guts and the loss of his chance to be king reveals his lack of concern for anything other than what he seeks to gain. Every action that Griffith takes from this moment on is completely void of conscience or consideration for others. Unable to fight or speak, however, his actions are limited to 3 weak gestures: attempting to strangle Guts, attempting to rape Casca, and attempting to escape from both of them to chase his lost dream. We have very little of Griffith's internal monologue in this story, but here we see how he feels about his dream.
There's still time to play! The sun's not down yet.
And how he considers the alternative. A simple life, a small home, being cared for by Casca and her children. For most people in Griffith's position, this would be a happy ending. While he may have lost the use of his body and speech, he still has what matters most: the love and care of his friends. A quiet life, yes, but one full of love and companionship. Surely this isn't so bad, right? Not for Griffith. He has never valued these people, not as friends, not as lovers, or even as brothers in arms. To him, the idea of sitting in a chair, unable to move and reliant on the sympathy of others, is nothing short of offensive to his very identity. When everything has been taken from him, Griffith chooses to abandon everyone, trying desperately to cling to his dream of being king, running from the people whose love for him makes him feel weak and helpless. Crashing into the lake, breaking his arm and being unable to do anything, even kill himself. This is his lowest point. All his beauty and charisma are gone, his schemes have failed, his mind left with nothing but the selfish desire to be a king. A broken psychopath, unable to fulfill his desires or control anything in his life, laughs hysterically in the middle of a filthy lake. But, worth noting here, the Bailey doesn't activate until Guts comes to rescue him. The man he felt the most for, and blames for everything, still loves him, reminding him of what he lost. And then...
You are our progeny, our newest kinsmen, our wing of darkness.
The Eclipse is one of the darkest chapters of any story ever created. It's the moment that fans remember. It's the moment that characters wish they could forget. Until now, all the other characters have been holding Griffith up as a champion, a leader, and a hero. But at the Eclipse, the God Hand remind Griffith of who he really is. A childish narcissist who had no problem piling up the bodies of the dead to achieve his dream. This is the only moment of Griffith's past that is shown to us directly, from his memories, rather than from another's. From most antagonists, this is the moment where we get to understand them. What are their motivations? Why are they them? But here, with Griffith, he looks at the castle and decides it should be his. That's it. There's no abuse or life-changing moment that drives his desires. No reason for him to want to be king at all. Even as a common boy, Griffith is healthy and wearing better clothes than most of the other people around him. His young self simply describes it as...
There's still time to play!
But still, he looks at the castle and decides he will be king. The why is never questioned. Griffith is a narcissist first and foremost. The fact that he wants it is enough for him. This is when the moment of choice arrives. Choose to be the hero, save your comrades, or sacrifice them for a dream you never even had a reason to chase. Griffith looks fondly at Guts, the only man who ever made him care about another human being. Could this be the moment of realization, of him giving up his selfish dream? No, he was always willing to do this. During the transformation, he sees the death of every member of the Band of the Hawk rushing through him, and to his own surprise, he feels nothing. The last drop of his emotion, his final tear, is swept away into the void. And when he emerges, reborn as Femto, the blessed king of longing, one of the most powerful beings in existence, He has exactly what he always wanted. Absolute power. And what does he do with it? Well, we know what he does with it. Many fans, myself included until I read the manga a third time, would see this act of violence against both Casca and Guts as a product of his transformation. He's a demon now. That's why he did it, right? No. Griffith was a psychopath long before this. Possibly since before Guts left him behind. Sadly, I do believe he would have killed Guts and raped Casca already, if he could have. I mean, we saw him try both. His transformation, as beautiful and terrible as it is, does not change his character at all. It's a reveal, to everyone, including the reader, of what a man like Griffith would do with ultimate power. From here on in, Griffith, or rather Femto, is a character frozen in time. He is complete and free to achieve his dream, but he is no longer capable of change. The post-eclipse story has Griffith conquering the world, defeating an empire, striking down a fake god, and through all of it, Griffith feels nothing. Nothing affects him, and so he cannot learn or change. He is the absolute, forever trapped, as himself, and is unable to care about any of it. The Triad is closed. Nothing can change it now.
Draw your sword and take your freedom from me.
Griffith, please!
Would you settle for a smile and a fond farewell? So be it.
Now, if you're one of my lovely subscribers, you'll know I like to round these videos off by asking a bunch of dumb rhetorical questions, trying desperately to relate my witless ramblings to real life. So, what can we learn from the story of Griffith? While everyone has a bit of the Dark Triad in them, most of us are not Griffith, or anything even close to him. None of us are going to be on the brink of ruling the world only to have it taken away, and offered a deal by monsters from a different plane of existence. Griffith is not meant to be relatable, he's meant to be alienating, both in his otherworldly beauty, his wild success, and his terrible acts of betrayal and destruction. It may only be a story, but the reason Griffith has an impact on us, the reader, is because he reminds us of all the dark things humans are capable of, and how easy it is to succumb to them. Picture your dream, right now, and ask yourself, what would you sacrifice? It also shows us the root, the core of all the darkness in humanity. Selfishness. Griffith always took the selfish option. That's all he ever did. And that made him the most beloved and despised villain in all of manga. So if something is taken from you, and you find yourself indulging your Dark Triad, maybe remember how much damage one person's selfishness can cause, and that Griffith did everything wrong.